Okay,
You good?
we are good.
All right, can you go to the next slide there?
Sure.
How's everybody doing? I'm Lance Brado, Director of Business Licensing. Seen a couple of these faces already here. This is our third set of meetings to discuss how we're going to change, modify, streamline, make the business licensing code more effective, more efficient, easier to understand. Obviously, there's a number of topics we've been going over, but something struck your interest today, obviously, and if that subject does not come up, still feel free to ask questions and all that. Happy to answer anything and take the feedback as it is, but I'm gonna go through what we've scheduled today and just kind of break it all down. Take any sort of information that you feel like sharing. Again, this is your time. Our goal here is to take your feedback and put that back into our drafting process so that we can make sure that you're heard, make sure that we can, like I said, make it more efficient for everybody involved, right? We also have Spanish assistants here in case anybody has any questions in Spanish or needs anything translated. And we also have a number of people on Zoom. So if you have a question on Zoom, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you over. Feel free to jump in at any time. Next slide. So today, again, these are the topics we're going to be discussing. If you have something outside of that, again, feel free to raise your hand and jump in and don't be afraid. We'll go over it, no matter what your topic is. Next slide first. So first off, mobile vending units, better known as food trucks. This isn't sidewalk vending. This is mobile food truck. These are the things that you see parked at Food Truck Fridays and at event spaces, not mobile vendors that you would see walking down the sidewalk. Okay, so a lot of the questions that are, a lot of the topics that I'll be bringing up will have to do with questions that we get, confusion, any type of things that we get from other divisions, like how come we can't do it this way, that way? Well, it's all in code. So I want to know from your perspective, if you're one of these license holders, what is preventing you from doing business better? What would you like to see change? So a couple of the things I've highlighted here. Food trucks are only allowed to be in the same spot for 4 hours, and then they have to move. They can be on private property, but they have to have the owner's permission. They cannot be on highway, streets, alleys, sidewalks, or city-owned public parking lot. They have to be 300 feet from any school, church, playground. And lastly, city parks, in the parking area of the city park, okay? Go to the next slide, please. Again, this is just kind of like a long list. These are all the time, place, and manner that go with this code. Can't be within 100 feet of the entrance of a permanent restaurant or business during operating hours. You can only operate from 7 to 11 p.m., 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. There's no hawking allowed, no yelling out, calling for people. Can't be within 300 feet of a special event, and you cannot serve alcoholic beverages unless it's part of a special event permit. So again, I don't know if anybody in this room or on Zoom has a food truck license or has questions about this kind of thing, but I'm happy to take any comments on this. Yes, sir.
So do these rules apply during a special event?
Special event's a little bit different. So
if the event lasts more than 4 hours,
correct,
for example.
That's right. Yep. Yep. It's kind of got its separate sub rules for the special event. Anybody else? Yeah.
Can you go a little more into different regarding the private property parking? I thought that was not enough.
Yeah. So if let's say I have a business and you would like to operate your food truck in my parking lot, as long as I give you permission to do so, you're allowed to do that. The other criteria applies as far as like being distance wise from another restaurant or the hours of operation, that all applies as well. But to be on private property, when it's not a special event, you just need the owner's permission and you can do that.
But it has to be commercial, not like residential, because some people have
Right.
big yards or things like
Right, and you could be in residential, you could be in somebody's driveway as long as you didn't meet all this or any of the
so if
distancing requirements.
the owner agrees and gives me a letter.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, you just can't park on the sidewalk.
right,
That's the thing.
yes.
Currently. So if that's something that causes consternation, it's like, why can't I park on the sidewalk in front of here with permission? Well, that's something worth, discussing. So. Anybody else on this? Yeah.
So the last one, sale or service of alcoholic beverages, I have a beer wagon.
Mhm.
And we're considered mobile vending and we're also clumped in with food trucks.
Sure.
So Is there gonna be any point in time where that kind of branches off into its own unit? Anytime soon?
I mean, it definitely could. I mean, everything's open right now. Everything's open for consideration.
Okay, and you're gonna talk to about all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to share the comment, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna gather all this comment along with all our internal comments and our historical knowledge of what works, what doesn't work, what complaints we get.
Yeah.
And we'll take that back to the consultant and
Yeah.
formulate new stuff. So,
Yeah, because I think not really with you guys, but more so like the health department. We're clearly different than food trucks in the way that we operate and how we have to manage our product and whatnot, but we're also clumped into exactly what they are as far as guidelines and how to get in to do that.
sure.
And so it's a little bit, it seems like mobile vending means food truck are kind of blown up a little bit, and so they're trying to figure out the best way to do all this, and I think one of them may be, branching off and having a separate, not division or whatever.
Separate type license.
Yeah,
Sure. No, that makes sense. And in food trucks, like you said, they have gotten, since this code was written, they've gotten, I mean, exponentially bigger. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's part of the reason we gotta look at this code, because it's someone's just outdated and maybe it needs to be looked at like that. So,
Oh.
thanks for that comment.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? No? Okay, go to the next one. Pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers. Secondhand dealer is basically anybody that's selling used property. There are a couple exemptions, like antiques, which is vague. It's anything supposedly 60 years old, right? Like, well, if you're in a store, do you know how old it is? I don't know how old it is. Who's the professional? We want to look at our definitions and make sure that we're being fair to everybody, giving everybody the opportunity to sell used property, but that it doesn't, go against any Nevada revised statute. We prevent that. Another question and a lot of, I guess, a complaint, if you will, or a why do I have to do this for secondhand dealers is the reporting method or the reporting requirements. There's a pretty strict set of requirements for what's supposed to be reported on a daily basis, and it can be time consuming, and it can seem to be over the top for somebody that's just selling, used clothing or something like that. So we're gonna take that into consideration and look at that. And again, I don't know if anybody has any comments. Yeah.
I'm here specifically for that.
Okay, good.
We have a used outdoor gear store.
Mhm.
We have to do everything that a pawn shop has to do.
Sure.
The only gear store in the country that has to do that.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense. Again, like person clean out their closet with 2 fleeces or something, and they have to give us their license. They have to take a picture of the license. We have to do all these things that seems a little bit much for a fleece.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there should be 2 different categories, but they're not under one code.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that.
There was a business down in Vegas. They literally had to move out of Clark County, or out of the Vegas district, so that they didn't have to do this.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're the only ones that have to do it anyway.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Sure.
About like art dealers.
Yes, art can fall into this. I haven't personally run across that, as far as like how we're licensing those kind of people, those kind of businesses. But maybe Alex, off the top of your head, any art dealers, have we required them to get this kind of license, or does that fall something separate?
I have not seen that happen.
We
What
have
about
art
the
dealers
city?
that sell paintings or other art objects that are not.
Is it their own paintings or are they purchasing it from somewhere else first? Or are they obtaining it somewhere else first?
Well, they're obtaining it, some of them are on consignment. Some of the stuff they buy themselves and then resell.
Okay,
So that seems kind of inconsistent. And I agree with Joe here, it needs to be divided, pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers. There's a lot of instances, I would think, with secondhand dealers that you can do things that make sense. Pawnbrokers, that's a different business in my mind than secondhand dealer. I think he had a great example.
Yeah, so we do consignment only. Yeah, we don't buy anything outright. And that's the same thing as an art.
Exactly, so what about-
They do consignment only mostly. And so it just doesn't make sense that it's grouped.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this is on and grouped and, yeah, exactly, there's a distinction there, so that's great feedback, that's good to know.
I own a custom motorcycle shop, and when I first opened 35 years ago, I tried to pay sales tax and license the business, because we get, people leave foot pegs that we take off and change and wanted to sell them. When we found out we had to go through all this, we don't do that. And we would, and it'd be more tax revenue for the city and for the state if we were allowed to do that without the ridiculous requirements that it entails.
Thanks, good. You have something?
Yeah, question. So I've gotten a few inquiries about like vintage or flea markets, like clothing and flea markets. I know that's technically like a special activity or event as well, but
Right.
how does that work with the secondhand dealer and those vendors?
Yeah, so basically, whoever's the promoter needs to get that approval. If they don't have a licensed secondhand dealer that's gonna be kind of running that, they need to go through the process and get it themselves, similar to alcohol. So if I wanna throw an event and I don't have an alcohol license, I need to go through the proper steps to go get a background check and all that, or find a licensed alcohol caterer or a licensed alcohol vendor, like a tap wagon or something like that to do that. So that they take the responsibility.
So then in this case, all right, so let's say there's a vintage flea market that's gonna happen at Believe Plaza. The promoter doesn't have the secondhand dealer. Can their vendors that are selling like the vintage or the records, do they, each of those vendors have to have the secondhand dealer license, or the promoter has to have?
Generally, we like the umbrella of the promoter having it, taking responsibility, but if the individuals have it, that's great too. I mean, if they're there, but they're responsible for what they are. You know, if you had an agreement to say like, yeah, I'll be responsible for everything, that they, you know, you can put them on the hook for it.
And if they don't have it, do they just pull the regular daily vendor permit,
Yes,
and that covers them for the second?
yeah, because they'd be under the umbrella of the approved secondhand, but they also.
But the promoter has to have the
Yeah.
second. Okay,
Can the promoter get a license just without one event, or they have to get like and?
You can get a license, a temporary license, but at the end of the day, the way our process is currently worked, you're going through the same process, so you might as well get the annual. So that doesn't make a lot of sense either, right? You should be able to maybe tone it back and get a 1-day permit. So that's something to consider as well, that we're looking at, saying like, is it over the top to get basically a full-blown license for something that you're just gonna do once?
You know, there's people once in a while that go, oh, yeah, it might be my month together, and just throw this one and once a year.
Right.
Flea market, and I'm not, that's, you gotta do that.
So I'm a secondhand dealer.
Yeah.
I'm classified as, because we deal with gold and silver, rare coins, et cetera. But because of that, we have holding requirements.
Sure.
So if you have an out-of-state vendor or a vendor who comes in for a special event, how are they gonna hold the merchandise for a lot of 2 weeks or 30 days, whatever it is?
Yeah, you know, I'm not positive how that, we don't get these a lot at special events, honestly.
Right.
And I don't know if in your experience, either one of you have seen this, like how they treat the holding requirements, because that's a good question. And I think there's a lot of probably inequity in the way this code is, it's so vague, right? And it doesn't give these specific examples, that it's hard to administer equally, and that's what we want to do.
Right.
So that's a great point, and I definitely would do that as well.
That may go back further to, do you split the two apart? Because a secondhand dealer to me, and once again, I may not be understanding the definitions because I don't deal with this on a day-to-day. A secondhand dealer is a financial transaction with a change of ownership immediately. Pawnbroker is one where there is a financial loan associated, and perhaps by splitting that, you've resolved a lot of these special event pieces because it now becomes a secondhand dealer at those, not a pawn.
Right.
Where they're loaning.
Right.
So that may help some of that overall, is splitting the two apart into two different pieces.
For sure.
Because they really are different businesses anymore, at least from
Yeah.
a layman's eyes.
Sure.
Just a little more fuel. I send, are you Lance
Yep.
Dorado, is that what you said?
Yep, I get them.
Yeah, so I send to you.
Yeah.
So that goes nowhere.
Well, basically what it is we review it and hold it, but it's basically that the way the code's written is so that the police can come back and say, yeah, oh, we have, and in your case, it's much different, right? It's like, oh, there's a backpack stolen, you know,
So
all units.
we've had
you know,
one
it's different.
stolen thing happen in the 5 years it existed, and it was, everything was done by us and the person who previously owned. And when we reached out to the police, like both, one was a California sheriff and the other one was here in Reno, they had no idea. We're like, what about all that stuff we paid? They said, what? You know what I mean? So all this extra work that we do is for like no reason at all.
And some of this stuff comes down from NRS, and there are things in here that we won't be able to change, but certain things like breaking the classifications of, you know, of a pawnbroker versus somebody who's just selling secondhand gear. Yeah, maybe we can do that, and maybe we have to look at it legally, and if it's, you know, we don't want to create a burden on a shop like yourself. With recording every single transaction, like you said, with the police.
I've been meaning to do something about this for a long time, but this meeting just happens to be like.
It's perfect, yeah, perfect.
I think one of the important things in there is distinguishable items. Because having dealt with, second-hand items, et cetera, in our business, we've helped catch criminal, we've helped put people away. The Guzman case where we murdered people in the area, it was because of our shop, turning everything in behind.
Wow.
So, there are good things about it. But, somebody stealing a pair of skis, how are you gonna identify that?
Right.
So I think the most important thing that you have in there is that anything is identifiable.
Sure.
And when I say identifiable,
Serial numbers.
exactly,
Yeah.
something like that, and serial numbers becomes a slippery slope as well. It's like, we deal in bullion. There are some items in bullion that are serial number.
Hmm.
But it's almost like it's a vehicle of commerce. So every $1 bill, $100 bill you have in your wallet has a serial number. But you can't go to check serial numbers on
Right.
every note that somebody transacts or changes with. You have to have some kind of reasonable, commerce clause in there.
Sure.
But, I think that's one thing that you should maybe have is identifiable things, like if you had a pair of skis that were graded, to Tom or Tom Burton, whatever.
Yeah.
Those would be identified. Anything else not, it's not necessarily going to be, how do you say,
Traceable.
prosecutable or traceable.
What we found, at least in our store, is a lot of things community based as far as like stolen items. We get calls all the time, but
Yeah.
the things don't come into us because that person is not gonna make money off of us. Because we have to consign, it. We're not getting the money out, right? So they don't, we've had people, like sketchy quote unquote people come in.
Sure.
And they turn right around when they find out we do consignment only.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Or you take ID for sure.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, yeah, to consign, we're gonna write down their address or name, take a picture, ID, all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, we're just gonna.
I recently got an inquiry for a ski and snowboard swap.
Mhm.
Where does that fall? 'Cause that's not necessarily money exchanging.
The swaps themselves, and a lot of those, there are financial transactions that take place. And the ones that we get through have had background checks. On an item for item, I don't know. I have to sit and look and see how that gets treated, but like I said, most of the swaps have some sort of monetary transaction involved in it. Or they're doing at least a little bit over here, and then the other stuff they're swapping, or, we have a couple of them, obviously, the big ones in here, but the
The retail one is like 90%.
Any questions on that? All right, we'll go to the next one. Auctions and auctioneers, this kind of crosses the paths a little bit with secondhand dealing, but one of our questions we get a lot, public outcry, like the definition of auctioneer is somebody that's actually verbally calling out bids and assigning a winner. It doesn't talk about the internet. When this code was written, internet sales and auctions weren't really a thing. So that's something that we have to identify, and we have to say, we need to better define this stuff so that people are, they look, wait a minute, I run this auction site, but it's not the same because it's digital. It's not in person. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing that's happening, but we have confusion in code, in administering the code because it doesn't say that in black and white. So, and I don't know if anyone has any comments on this. It's pretty low key. Like I said, we get a question about it every once in a while, but it's something that we need to bring up in the business. So, okay, next one. So peddlers, solicitors, temporary merchants, very similar to a food truck / sidewalk vendor is a peddler. Classify it. You might have heard ice cream trucks called as peddlers. That's what they are. That's how they're defined in the Reno Municipal Code. So if you want to sell ice cream, going through the streets of Reno in a truck, it's not a food truck license. It's not a sidewalk vendor. It's a peddler's license. Again, we have a lot of restrictions similar to food trucks on where you can be within commercial and industrial zones, 30 feet away from gaming establishments, can only operate 9 to 9. Then it gets into how groups are defined and people are going door to door selling and soliciting, not just ice cream, right? This could be anything. You see people selling products like steaks. You see those people out selling door to door. You could just be doing solicitation door to door and in hopes of selling like like an alarm system or a vacuum. You see those kind of businesses. This is obviously, while we have the sidewalk vending code open and the food truck code open, We want to make sure that there's consistencies and clear delineations of what is what and what's required of each. Maybe these all fall under the same type of license. Maybe they don't. It's something that we all want to look at, and we want to make sure that, you know, we're taking feedback from anybody that's got a truck or an ice cream. Yeah,
I have a question, I mean, is that a law now, or is it something you're looking at, that if I'm a door-to-door salesperson, I need a business license?
that's right. Yep. That's the law right now.
It's a law now, so if I'm selling Girl Scout cookies,
Girl Scout cookies are tricky. That's, you know, door-to-door kids going and doing fundraisers. That's probably not something that anybody would enforce. Kind of like a lemonade stand type of thing.
Do we ever think we're over-regulating?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of this.
well, I mean, a political campaign.
This seems
Yeah.
absurd, I'm sorry.
So peddler's licensing, getting back into this, I think that this stemmed from, you know, having ice cream trucks roll through neighborhoods, unmarked vans, having kids run up to it and not, what is this? Is this a license? Is this somebody that's supposed to be out here interacting with children? So that's where this kind of stuff came along. And again, it's been years. Now we're allowing, the state's allowing sidewalk vendors to walk right through a neighborhood. So it's not as big of a concern apparently at that level. So that's why we're bringing this stuff up. We don't want to overregulate. We don't want to make it confusing. We want to clear it up. So, yeah, no, you're right. There's a lot of stuff that.
Can we get rid of like 50% of this stuff?
I mean, it would make my job a lot easier, but.
I mean,
Does this include musicians?
Musicians, have been something that we're gonna talk about as well. We have it in the past. There's been no regulation on that. And it's that you get into, First Amendment stuff with musicians and freedom of speech, so it gets difficult to regulate that too. So
Now they have to be licensed.
say again,
Now they have to be licensed.
it depends on what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, if it's just, somebody that's out on the corner of the street playing a guitar, you can try to license them. They can just leave, regulation and enforcement becomes difficult in those scenarios. So,
But doesn't the city of Reno have a license permit for that now? It costs you $50 a year.
no, for somebody that just does like busting.
Stands on the corner, plays music.
No, we don't have a license for that right now.
You know, cause I thought there was,
Me
years
too.
ago, a street performer.
There could have been. I don't know, is there a street performer? They don't have any license right
There was one a while ago,
So it's not effective anymore?
no.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
cause I know there used to be one.
There used to be one. I knew there was.
Gotcha.
Perhaps on this, peddlers, solicitors and tempting merchants, when you talk about Girl Scouts and things like that, it might be as simple as putting an exception to it. Sure. For nonprofits doing fundraising no more than X period of time per year.
Yep.
Because honestly, should a couple of Girl Scouts go and sell cookies? No.
Right.
Should that state merchant? Probably.
Sure.
And that might be the way to address that.
Could be, yeah, man.
Well, and I want to comment on this on the door-to-door salespeople, whether they're, they're selling something, and partly I say this because I see a lot of young people coming out, including my granddaughter who's done this in the past. They're working for companies, they're starting out, they're doing door-to-door sales, and they're working for a company, they're legitimate, and boy, having to throw another license on top of all those, I see that as over-regulation. They're, yeah, I think as much as we hate door-to-door sale, I mean, as much as we sometimes dislike them, whatever they're doing, I do not see over regulation on that is none.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So, and are these permits, does the person going door to door in that scenario need to hold this permit or just the company?
So basically, the company itself. I mean,
Okay.
if there's if you're a truck driver, you're holding a license, kind of like, how like a massage establishment, you have a massage establishment license, then the people they don't necessarily, if they're independent contractors. If they're an employee,
Sales,
yeah.
just the company holds the permit and their employees, right, work under it, okay.
Except that that company's already got a business license anyway, so now you're gonna hit them up with another fee because now they're,
Sure.
so how much do you go with that?
Right. Anybody online?
What exactly is day sleeper? Like.
Oh, like like when people have on their sign, they don't want people knocking on their door, they'll say like that's an alternative, and this is how old this code is.
Yeah.
So, you've seen those solicitation signs. on
Yeah,
people's
sure,
doors sometimes,
sure,
but
just day sleeper. was-
They said
yeah.
they felt like calling that out. It was obviously popular enough at the time that they wrote this code. And they distinguished.
Or it's a 24-hour town, so.
Yeah, sure, sorry. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah. Next one, got it?
Can I back up one second?
Yeah, absolutely,
Just, you said that you're going to give this to the consultants
sure,
to read around the code.
Yeah.
'Cause at this point, the meeting is pretty much done. with the rest of it.
sure.
Is there a way to just get a hold of you and maybe consult with you?
Absolutely, yeah, if you go on, the letter you received,
Yep.
or if you go online, if you go online to the website, you can send an email to bocode@area.gov. There's also a couple links on there, you can just submit a form to, or comment through the form. And then you can give us a call at any time if you want. I prefer to writing, so we can track it better. So
Because I'd be happy to help with you. I do national things around the country. So
that's awesome.
I see where regulations have pushed businesses out of areas and,
Sure.
you know, and how it's including there's some things out there that you guys are doing that can help as well. So
Yeah.
we can help you with that. So.
Thank you. All right.
And reach out to the emails.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, you got it, yeah, for sure, yeah, anybody. Okay, so, special events and activities. This is a big one, we obviously get a lot of, we have tons of events in town, we have tons of special activities. A lot of the things, I would say the number one complaint or concern that we get is, I own a business, why can't I have a party at my business without a permit, right? That's the biggest thing, because that's the way the code is written, right? And so now's our time to discuss it. Does that need to happen? Does it need to happen as strict as it does? I can tell you right now, the main reason that there is a permit required for that kind of thing is so that health and safety is primary, right? So that the fire department can come in and say, that's great, you're a flower shop, but you want to have 500 people and throw a concert in here, and you're going to serve alcohol. That's not what this is licensed for. We need to make sure that you're setting it up right, that everything's safe. That's an extreme example, right? But that's why, and that's how the special activity permits are enforced.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
if it's a business,
Uh-huh.
private business, explain to me why you need to have, and you just said there were several instances about volume. Every business has a limit on occupancy,
Sure.
it's within the fire code. So if you're in violation of that, no matter what you are doing.
Yeah.
You're in violation.
Correct.
Just like any other violation of any other regulation. So
You're
it
right.
doesn't seem to me that with any special activity on private property, that there should be no permit requirements.
Okay,
Because
let's
the owner
take-
of the property is the one that's ultimately responsible.
So let's take an example of like an event space, and it's just an empty room like this. And I say, we're gonna have a party, and we're gonna set up bars, and we're gonna set up food vendors and everything else. One thing we have to let the health department know, that there's gonna be food and
You need a liquor license to do like liquor. that's
Second,
right.
you need a liquor
Right.
license. Hopefully somebody has one or you're gonna find one.
Right.
Thirdly, this was just, this was a license, let's just pretend as an event room to have children's ballet. And I go, well, yeah, this would also be good to throw birthday parties in. But when it got originally looked at by building, by planning, by code enforcement, by fire, they all expected for this to be licensed a certain way for little kids doing ballet. So when you tell them you're gonna have a big party in it, it throws different requirements into it. And that's why the city likes to get an eye on it to say, what's going on and why is it licensed that way? Because it's not. And if you can get it licensed, hey, we're gonna have ballet week, Monday through Friday. And we're gonna have parties on Friday and Saturday. That's a thing. And people do that. And they get that, their license adjusted. So
So if you own this property, you're restricted by the number of people that are in here.
that's one restriction for sure.
That's the biggest restriction, because that's where fire comes in.
Right.
And so it would seem to me that if you own this building and this space, you can do anything that's legal within this space.
Well,
Whether it's ballet,
I mean,
whether it's parties,
you can argue
liquor
that.
license,
Yeah.
all those things. As a private property owner, that should be my right. And this, you hit a point real quick that said, the city likes to keep its eye on it.
Well, right.
That's the issue.
If the place
Is
burns
why
down,
would the city
or
even want to
because
know about it?
there's a big brawl because there was alcohol here and nobody knew about it.
And the property owner's responsible.
Right, but there's a city that's containing everything and has to be able to respond with police and fire and go like, hey, if we would have just saw this before, we would have known exactly what was going on. We would have said, no way in heck, this guy's not allowed to have a liquor license. So there's different scenarios for every exception. I mean, there's different exceptions for every scenario. But that's the gist of why this code was built that way.
You know, you just said something that concerns me, the police responding. My business has been broken into so many times in the last few years. I've filed so many reports online and they never show up.
Sure.
So what does it really matter?
Well, that's a question for.
I mean, really,
police department.
if the city wants to control it, but small business is constantly broken into and robbed and stolen from, the law is broken. And we pay the majority of the taxes, but you don't respond.
Right.
So what is it, what's the purpose, I guess?
Well, these are emergency situations at an event where, you know, a building's burning.
But the police don't respond.
Again, that's an
I mean,
argument.
the whole thing to me is the city wants to control it, but they don't respond to the problems of the businesses.
Or what the responsibility of it.
Yeah.
Should never step in and say, guess what, we goofed up. You know, it's our responsibility. That never happens.
So I mean,
It's always they're pointing at the owner.
you're trying to hold us accountable. Accountability is good, but how do we hold our government accountable?
Sure.
Go back to the topic, I'm sorry, but it's a frustration.
One of the things that the gentleman just mentioned. Fire departments and building code sets an occupancy limit. Well, that occupancy limit is based upon the use.
Exactly.
That may very well change with a different use, and you may get to a point where, oh, you can't have as many people as that sign says in there very easily.
Right.
So it is important to look at a different use and go, is the building still safe for it? It may very well be no emergency lighting needed for the normal use, but the second you get into an assembly type occupancy, now you have to have emergency egress lighting.
Right.
You may not have enough exit doors to get them out quickly. So
Sure.
while I understand what he's saying, I'm sorry, it is important to look at it from a building code standpoint because it may very drastically change things.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way to get the scheduling for special events and let's say, city parks or something like that to be within the same department? So we avoid double booking all the time.
Yeah, so can you, just so I understand, you're giving the example of, you want to throw an event at a park and you had to go through two avenues to get it. You had to go rent the park and then go rent the.
Yeah, well, yeah, so I run some youth groups and when we get there, there's scheduling for clubs, there's scheduling for special events, and there's scheduling for the public.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've literally been triple booked by all three of those departments at the same time.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get them all together so that when you schedule, everybody knows what's going on?
Sure.
I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that's I know we have, at least since I've been here, we have made things better. I've seen things in parks and special events, even before special events was under business license, how they've tried to make that better. It's tricky and it needs work. There's no doubt.
No, I agree, it has been
Yeah.
getting better, but.
It needs to be better.
Still, I would like there to be one department.
Yeah.
For scheduling so that, I mean, that would just make it so much easier for you too.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
have to
you're right.
Be so redundant through all these
No,
departments.
I appreciate that comment. We'll definitely look into that some more. I can't agree more.
This is the second nonprofit I've worked at now that I've lived in Reno and. Previously it was a farm that we were running farmers market, so everything was all outside, but currently I'm working at a creative maker space and we've jumped so many hoops for permitting in all the different shops and permitting to have different studio artists in there. And you know, probably throw, I don't know, 6 to 12 events a year, and so. It is interesting that the occupancy changes in such a vast array. It is totally fine, I think, to have the fire department come in and know what's going on in case something does go off. You know, no tools and things are ever running when we're doing an event. But every time you call the fire department out for a new permit, it's another $120 to $180.
Right.
So it's like, we have submitted everything each time, but it's like, it seems like there should almost be like, okay, we are this space, but we also are doing events for the community.
Sure.
And it seems like there should be, I don't know, an annual bundle thing of like, you're dealing with the fire department, but like, that's well over, you know, $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
Just in the permit, and like, it's typically, it's a little bit of a flex space where these things happen, but it's kind of absorbent. And it seems like, you know, again, we're doing things for the community and we're kind of getting nickeled and dimed on everything. And it seems like most of our events all kind of have the flow or flex about the same number. And at first, you know, it was like, oh, you don't have enough bathrooms. So we got 2 extra bathrooms put in. And so, okay, now we're good on this. But it's like from one event to another event, it's like our estimated, and again, our estimated and what actual comes out occupancy is all under what our original allowed occupancy is, but it's like this whole huge hill and mountain to deal with each time. And again, we're a space that's doing something pretty consistently, so it just seems like You know, again, more than happy to have people come in. We don't wanna see anybody get hurt. You know, we do have a cabaret license. We're trying to go about everything in the right way, but it's just like. You know, for something that's a nonprofit that is trying to do something to better the community, it's just like. There should be, like, you know, you're a space for this, but also this, and you're upfront about that from the get-go, and then you know. Schedule things out, or, you know, it seems there should be maybe an annual, you're an event space fee.
Sure.
And
Get things covered with that.
The annual event isn't necessarily a bad idea for somebody that's only one that often.
Yeah.
And it might be this type of event, that number of occupancy, and everybody's going, okay, we've already looked at it once.
right, and come back in to like
Because
see what the new layout is or see whatever, but you know, I mean, like.
Somebody doing it once a year is very different than somebody doing it 6 to 12 times a year, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You gonna say something?
I was just gonna share, and I don't know all the details, but when I learned about blanket permits.
Yeah.
So 2 hats, city hat and
Sure.
business owner, but like, the blanket permit was super helpful for me in private sector space because, like, oh, we're gonna do this event 5 times a year. This is gonna be the site plan for
Yeah.
that event, 1 fire inspection fee, like that might be.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know about that.
No, and it's, and
Yeah.
probably because it's so new. Like, we just basically came up with this concept last year, with people that have event spaces that say like, yeah, I do this more than once a year, you know, I wanna do this a lot of times. Because technically, if you're a special activity permit or something, you're only supposed to get 6 a year. If you're doing it more than that, then you're probably an event venue. So we can just say, okay, let's call you an event venue. So if it's something like that, as our current process, now as this, you know, as this process changes, maybe this isn't even a thing when we get the new code in, maybe it's just clear as day and, you know, we have a new process, but as it currently stands, we can talk to you about that.
Okay.
Yeah, blanket permits.
5 million questions for you. So far, all the conversations for special activities, because it's a special activity that's in private parking lot.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, so that everybody knows, special activities, private property, special events, public property.
Which is confusing, which probably needs better terminology because it is confusing.
Sure, I agree.
If we host a special activity in our private parking lot.
Yeah.
That still falls under, should that not be divided like outdoor activity versus indoor space? Half the time the fire already knows you, they don't show up, there's not barricades, there's no obstruction, guests can get out, but yet we're sort of paying that $100 for time. So and they also, from my understanding, is my fee could be, oh, I'm only gonna have 100 people, 50 people in my parking lot, but yet I'm paying the same fee as someone during an event with 1,000 people.
Right.
The cost isn't any different to me, it's a small number.
Right.
So that should be looked at.
Okay.
I'm paying 500 every single time to close off my parking lot, whether I'm just gonna show a movie out my parking lot.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
The other thing is, then it is the coordination between the health department. There's another fee for me just to have a bar outside, or if you guys, I have 2 bars, that's another fee to set up 2 bars. To serve ice outside is $180 and it falls under an entire catering food permit just to serve out a tent, hand washing station, and a full inspection from the health department, as well as $180 fee, which is just ice.
Right.
It seems insane. Versus like someone can set up a whole entire buffet for the same price.
Sure.
I'm having to pay. There's a problem within this whole section. If you actually are a nonprofit and you're proving or you're hosting the event for a nonprofit, that some of these fees could be taken away. But somehow it's very confusing of what a nonprofit is, what the event is for a nonprofit, and what those fees are if you're hosting that event through 501c.
Well, it is
And that's just the start.
in my experience, the vendors, right, if they are a nonprofit vendor, they would be no license required.
But you're starting bingo.
Yeah.
For a nonprofit.
Well, you mean like you're promoting an event for a nonprofit?
Outside, we're gonna have bingo and people are gonna come play bingo and money's raised, all goes to a 501c. I saw we paid $500 to set that up to go to the charity. So that 500 the city didn't get to go to that charity.
Yeah, so that's something we can look at too. I mean, I think you make a good argument. Sure. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'd like to also find out about, like the crawls. Theoretically, those crawls pay 0, from what I understand, it means to the city, yet they use most of the city resources, cause most of the havoc, and they pay 0 as the crawls fall under the scope of regular
right.
So what are you guys gonna on that?
We're looking at possible ordinance, and that's been something that's been, they've been researching it for a while now, the city attorney's office.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, on how they kind of, we just had a conversation about it more recently that, you know, how can we address this? Because like you said, they don't have to have the same kind of permitting that somebody does, and it's not
It's
equitable.
not within this guideline.
Exactly.
Because it's in your activity within the four walls of the law.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. It needs to be, and looked at in some form or fashion, it needs to be mentioned. It's just completely silent.
The other thing is, the noise ordinance. Everyone here will be the Reno, this is one Nevada, it's a 24-hour count. Within your corridor, there's, you guys have put, I don't even know where it's coming, it's just an ordinance saying you have to stop at 10 p.m. And that's not, doesn't vote on, it's just put on arbitrarily, probably for this events, they want everybody back in.
And that applies, you're talking about the cabaret license in the like entertainment.
Special outside of music, all
Yeah.
music must stop at 10 o'clock.
Right.
We're in a 24-hour city, we wanna grow the city, we wanna pay, I'm paying $500. If I have to stop everything at 9 p.m., we shut by 10, that's when we just get going.
Sure.
You know, so there's gotta be some conversation about changing out within the corridor, allowing once in a while special activities. And maybe once we did that, how we ever grows the city to have events and things like that. We show it's like our account.
Okay, yeah, great.
Keep in mind,
The stuff that, cabaret license, put that in Title 18 land development.
Yeah.
Business development is ridiculous. I mean, I've had a cabaret license now 20 years.
Mhm.
I would never even think to look there,
Sure.
you know, the only reason I even heard about it was because I was here at the meeting last week.
Yeah, and to clarify, like in a case like yours, your grandfather, right, you can continue operating when you've always operated.
Sure.
But for anybody new coming in, yeah, they would have to, they have to cease live entertainment at 11 o'clock.
Right, where
And
would
that's the special.
how would they find that?
Right?
Being in Title 18, not what, section 4.
And I think that you make a good point that there could be, even though that is a land use standard I think created, it could be alluded to in this code so that there's no surprises.
Right.
Somebody reads this, they go, oh, I need to look over there. Like you said, you would never.
Right.
Yeah, on the alcohol permit side, like, I don't see a reason why it needs to stop alcohol service an hour before your event's done. Like,
Okay.
you're losing tons of money as a bar in that situation. Like, I have big concerts outside, my headliner is just about to go on, but my alcohol sales haven't stopped. So my whole main act that is cost me the most is not generating the income.
Those hours and those times do not be applicable for this hour. City most clients till midnight alcohol. And it seems many were a 24-hour state. This is our laws.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't that just change a couple of years ago? Did the council just change that regulation?
On the live entertainment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a year ago.
Yeah, I don't think that was noticed very well.
First I wanted to address the nonprofit because I've managed events for like 20 years. As a nonprofit, when we go in and do city events, Reno Sparks Estate, we've never been given discounts because we're the only thing that we've been exempt from with the city and the state is we do not have to get a business license.
Right.
We have a festival of 15,000 people. We pay full price for everything, fleets and everything, because it's the same thing. And the only time I've seen as a nonprofit when we get discounts is typically private businesses, or sometimes if it's a meeting room, a nonprofit will get a discount, but we're playing fleets and everything too. And for the people that have music at late events, I agree with you 100%, but one thing I do want to say is having managed events that run into the evening, it's that once 9, 10 o'clock comes, that's when your police costs and everything are going up. It's having managed them, it's like at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, suddenly the crowd changes and there's more alcohol, there's more drinking, and so I just realized there's more police costs for those. And that's, again, I think if that promoter wants to do it, good for his ways to realize it. Have them there.
As far as like in having events and having vendors there and you know, having the special event permit and, you know, if you have some, typically there are artists making, you know, a little this, that, or whatever, at most, they're probably walking away with $500 for a thing. The idea of the location, getting the permit out, yes, figuring out whether people have their own business license or not. If not, okay, then they take, you know, and they pay the like individual day, but then for the main event people to have to go around and police what the taxes of each of those different people are that are like, that seems like that should be more of this, like, we're telling you Susie Q makes these whatever things, and then she came to our event, so like, for us to go around and be like, all right, Susie, how much did you make, and collect that, that seems like that shouldn't be on our side of things, and it makes events feel really weird when you're like, you know, and maybe they made nothing that day, you know, or maybe they made $100 and then like, I'm having to go shake them down.
You shouldn't have to be reporting the vendor sales.
Right, each vendor should be.
Yeah, they're their own business. They
Right,
have a
so-
temporary license if they're not licensed. If
Right.
they are licensed, they're paying them. They just have to, if they don't have a license in the city and they want to participate in an event, then that costs the promoter $20 because they're not licensed. So
Right,
it's,
so like that temporary bit, like I, you know, even at the farmer's market, but I collect those. But then whoever it was that I was talking to was like, oh, well, we also need you to have this form filled out and collect, you know, what their net sales were. And it was like, that doesn't seem quite right, because I'm giving you their name, their address, their everything, and like, if they then are not submitting it to you, then that's like between the city and that vendor, not me to talk to these 10 people and be like, you know, oh, you made $200, great, kick me this so that I can give it to the city.
Right.
That's at least the way that person, I don't know, I'll go back through emails
Yeah,
from
we
the
talked
person that I was talking with, it was kind of frustrating for.
sorry, one second, somebody online?
No, I was just gonna clarify, that's something with the Department of Taxation. We don't record any of that information. The Department of Taxation records that directly. So
Okay.
that might be a comment that you can address with them, and we can let them know as well.
Okay, it's just, it seems like, again, like if I'm saying I've got, you know, these 10 vendors at this event and, you know, I've given you their name, their address, their phone number, their email, and it just feels kind of intrusive and weird to be like, okay, now I'm gonna police for the taxation or the city and like figure it out, like I'm telling you that they're here, I shouldn't then. It's off-putting and turning for a lot of people, and again, it's like, I don't know, a little person, they're not making even $5 grand or more, and just even, yeah, the permits and everything, you know, like the sale. Getting the permits are extremely expensive, so it's like you got a crazy, great, diverse, artistic community here, and it seems like we're not trying to see them actually get a chance to get ahead, so like. In a yearly thing, I feel like maybe there should be 2 brackets, like. Total newbies starting out, trying to start a business, then, okay, now you're in like, this, you know.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, this one kind of goes into the marijuana field, because I wanted to bring a sponsor on that was a dispensary.
Yeah.
But I can't, because they're not allowed to advertise within so many feet of this, and this.
Right.
Or they can't do any kind of advertising, and I just.
Yeah, a lot of that falls on state law, and we'll be looking at it all to make sure that, you know, if there's a strong desire in the community to be able to do something like that and it doesn't break state law, then it's something we can talk about for sure. But I know a lot of those cannabis laws are almost just taken straight from it. But yeah, we'll look at it for sure.
Couple comments on that, are they, I don't know if they're called one times or the single use, that's $20 for a vendor.
Yeah, like a temporary events, yeah.
One of the big issues this year I saw was. I never saw it in writing, I was told there's a new rule, everybody is to have one of those, nonprofit, table, selling, doesn't matter. That created a huge issue for me at Earth Day, we're checking in 200 nonprofits that all say. We're not required to have a business license in the city, or you know, according to the ordinance, but we're requiring them to have something to table.
Yeah,
So
and the nonprofits, they should, and we can discuss your specific scenario in general, but as it sits right now, nonprofits shouldn't be charged. We ask for them to be reported so that we can go through, you know, when we do our inspections, but they shouldn't have had to pay the $20 for the.
So that's how it's been the last 8 years I've been doing events in the city, but this year I was told every nonprofit. That's not, and I actually had a city rep come down to the event. It was getting so bad.
Gotcha. Okay,
So that
I'm
was
happy to talk about that
one.
specifically.
With those as well, and this came more from the auto science side, we're having an issue, they're wanting all of the list of vendors on out.
Yeah.
The majority of our vendors come on the last 2 weeks.
Yep, I can appreciate that.
And so what's happening, and I just dealt with this at our fall event, I might have 80 signed up on my list.
Yeah.
30 of those are gonna no-show, I'm gonna get 50 new signups. It gets very confusing to then go to the city and say, these ones came, these ones didn't, I need a refund on them. And then a way to be able to look at who's already permitted. So that I can go and send the list to the city, I can look up in advance, we don't have a way to do that, that's something in Truckee they do.
Sure.
You can go through, here's our business licenses, the owner has to go through and find them.
Yeah.
That would be hugely helpful, so I'm not paying all these business license fees, then waiting for refunds and.
Yeah, okay, no, those are good. Good comments, thank you. Yeah.
Hate to go back to something we kind of talked about in another meeting, but I think it's important to mention. There was a discussion about the amplified music and it's unreasonable to cut them off at a certain hour. I'm going to completely disagree with that from a starting point, because we also have residential adjacency and things. If anything, and that includes Midtown, Virginia corridor and 4th Street. It might be where it needs to be. This is the time, unless you come with an administrative review and we decide, okay, you're far enough away where you're not gonna have a problem.
Sure.
But I don't think it's one where that time can be cut off completely. Because you're gonna have a whole lot of residents complaining about not being able to sleep at night and get up to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
So I don't know that it can be something that's changed in the baseline. An administrative review and go, okay, yes, this is appropriate, as long as we don't have problems, might be the solution there.
These are two different things he's talking about. The Title 18 is different from the business on a daily basis. It is just a one-time special.
Yeah, I know. There was a comment made earlier about doing away with the end time for amplified music in the Virginia corridor. I was simply coming back to that.
I think that the key from our perspective is that we need to do everything we can in the code to encourage special events and special activities.
Sure.
Especially in our downtown core, we spend tons of money and tons of effort to get people to come downtown to special events. Anything we can do to encourage it, I think would be a positive.
Okay.
And everything we do that's going to discourage it would be a negative for the city.
Sure.
So I would just say as an overall thing is, when you start looking at these things, how's it going to affect them will be a positive for them.
Thank you. Yeah.
And those people in those communities that live there generally know what's happening on around them. So, you know, to what he's saying, you know, they should know that they're living a block from Midtown and that it gets loud. You know, if you wanna sleep well and wake up at 8 AM, maybe you go somewhere where there's not as much noise.
Sure.
Great, that's true. Thank you for that meeting.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no problem.
Really helpful.
Of course.
And just wanted to say, one is related to vendor. Food truck Friday, we only have 5 non-food vendors on average. I know the amount of time it touches phone calls and interactions that take place between the city staff and my vendors, but 5 vendors was equated to $100 in fees, which is good, but if there's a way we can work together to create some better efficiency for that.
Sure.
I felt really bad for Alexander and staff and everyone in the business. It's saying the amount of times of having interactions with like that. We public fees this year. Yeah. You know, we had very good communication with our vendors saying, like, you have a city freedom permit, great, no, great, here's offer. But just some sort of a system to better create an efficiency in the operation.
Okay.
But that would be more helpful for your staff.
Yeah.
Than for us, because we have no problem reporting constantly and the changes that we make. It's a lot. You know, and I already know I'm one of what 250, 300 events that take place in this town.
Right.
And the amount of interactions and touches that just I have on a weekly basis with different departments of staff. Just over the couch, I can imagine how it's so
Yeah.
My other comment related to our interpretation, you know, in special events, Eric and Rachel coming on board on the manager's office and the great work you guys are doing with the special events committee and how we're going. You know, we want to grow this and be really good with our events because events really impact our economy. We saw that in COVID. In other communities where I traveled to California, those towns were dead because no events took place and events drove the economy. So we know it makes an economic impact, but
We look at, some of the things taking place in how we grow these events. I really want some sort of. The health department, when Jeff retired as the county health commissioner, director for food service. He gave me a phone call, this was probably 2017, I think, 2016, he said, get ready, Schroeder. The health department is no longer a governing body of oversight for health. It's not gonna become a revenue generating organization. And this year was the most painful and difficult year of putting on an event with the health department. Now, I know we're the city of Reno, we're here to talk about city of Reno special events, but I'm just giving a heads up. These events will incur challenges at a level that, as we as a city, the county, and I know, city staff and the council, like, well, just push that stuff off. We don't need any more governing or oversight of health. And yes, there's a purpose. My event's pure food. Most events in terms of revenue, food is a good revenue generator, beverages, beer, alcohol. But when you get a rogue department at this point, this year is what we saw. When they come in, and there's a different interpretation of the rules based on which officer actually comes out to inspections. My event was hit 13 times every single week because they felt the most quantity of vendors were available. So let's just go ahead and hit that event. The closures, shutdowns, and enforcement of rules and regulations based on their interpretation. It was ridiculous. And then for me as an event promoter, I spent 6 months working with you guys in the city to put on an event in the city park. 2 weeks prior to the event, I got a notification from Washington Health Department that, oh, this year we've instituted a new permit. And if you don't get this health permit from us, which is several $1,000s, we will sign off. Shut down your event, you can operate. Well, I just spent 6 months going through all this with you guys. Sure. And everybody in this room does that. And suddenly you got this oversight, this body. I would just like to see the city of Reno step up with some big white pants on and kind of control what's happening with our growth of events and what we're doing, because these event promoters, we're seasoned. We know what's going on. We don't want, and we call the Marquez effect, we don't want bacteriology or any problems. It comes back on us, comes back on our vendors, comes back on it. It's a huge problem in this community. Everybody's done a really good job doing that. But that oversight is just out of control. I don't know, it's pushed off, it's another, level of government above and beyond the city of Reno. But in terms of growth for our economy, they don't care. The growth of our events, it is a nightmare. And it's to the point where they want to be argumentative with me in front of my vendors about an interpretation of a rule that they've already passed and approved. But 2 weeks later, they feel there's going to be a change to it and they want to create a shutdown. Kyle's business was affected by that this year with an interpretation of a rule that they had already approved, yet they shut down for an entire event, loss of thousands and thousands of dollars, only to find out they were wrong. They don't like to be told that, but that oversight is a huge issue. The second issue, and it comes down, I don't know where it fits in, but our city's interpretation of freedom of speech at events. So this year I'm really concerned because we're coming into a season political year prior to elections. Even though it's 2024 for next summer. I just feel that the city, the interpretation of the city documents is the concern we're being sued by the city of Sparks over freedom of speech. There's one individual in this town that does want to go to events, doesn't want to challenge the perimeters, the barriers, and all the rules, just so they can get a lawsuit with the ACLU. And I just, as an event promoter, I mean, okay, I'm putting on a family event. I don't need somebody selling sex toys because it fits under freedom of speech. They don't have to be permitted. I've got these vendors that we have to go through all these points of communication and touch for a $20 permit fee. They don't have to pay a permit fee. They can come into your event, obstruct your event, set up whatever they want because they're freedom of speech. They can sit at the perimeter of the event. When I spend 6 months, thousands and thousands of dollars to put on an event, they can encounter and talk to every single person that walks through the front gate of my event at no cost. And interrupt, hand out leaflets, do whatever they want, and there's no oversight. Our PD can't touch them, my security can't touch them, I can't talk to them. I can say, hey, please, can you just go over here and just leave my people alone because I can't bring them here? That we started seeing, I've been working with Casey on the she's wonderful. Our hands are tied. When you have people that on a weekly basis will show up in your offices to challenge the perimeters of the event to figure out where they can stand, go, and be able to encounter the customers that we bring. After I have conversations with them and say, look, I'm on Friday night. Why was you here Thursday? There's nobody here. Exactly. Yeah, well, why don't you put out the money to bring the people here? You want to talk to them. the freedom of speech interpretation is so loose right now, it can be products. When I grew up, freedom of speech was talk, advertising, writing. I mean, that's freedom of speech, not selling products or getting in the face of customers to do something that you believe in. Nothing against whatever they believe in, what we encountered this year was ridiculous, what people believe in. But having that impact an event when customers are like, yeah, I just don't want to go there because I don't want to deal with those people. Well, that's at the front entrance, and to an event, your entrance point, like any business, it's got to be fantastic for that customer to encounter a business, feel good about it when they come in, feel good about it when they leave. That's the only two things they remember from your event, from your business, anything. It's marketing 101. I don't know where to go with that or how to rate it in, but I just got to bring it up and say, freedom of speech, vendors is a huge issue at events. Okay. And it's going to get worse this year.
Okay.
Can I tag something on to
Yeah, absolutely.
2021 and 2022, they actually took our free speech area signs and moved them to the middle of the event.
Oh, the free speech people went and moved them? Gotcha.
And we were told by police that their hands were tied. So what's
Yeah,
the
that's
point of
definitely-
even?
Yeah, no, I would be frustrated too, because it's clearly the promoter has the ability to put them in the designated area, so, yeah, I'm sorry to run into that issue. That's, yeah, that's. a tough
What's our
one.
recourse?
Yeah, exactly. I guess having this code, First Amendment, that's one of the chapters, obviously, that we'll be discussing. You know, it has to be looked at, and that's a heavily, obviously, legal piece of code. So the attorneys will be heavily involved in any sort of change to that. But I want to hear from instances and things like this that, hey, this is an issue, and is there a way we can fix it? Yeah,
And with the free speech comes the issue of dogs.
okay.
Dogs are, as an event producer, they're a huge liability. The health department permits say no dogs allowed around the city of Reno. I've been told has it in their, this city, the city will say it, but when I go to the event meeting, because of, the federal law, I had the Reno PD say they're not even gonna ask them. I mean, anybody with a pet or whatever, you know, because there are the ADA things, but
Sure.
it's a huge liability, you know, we had a festival last year. I've seen dog fights, I've seen dog, you know, we the producer are liable. And the Reno PD turns they're turning their head mainly because I think the legal department has said, can't say anything. But
Gotcha.
dogs are a huge, huge safety issue.
Okay.
Question on the free speech, visual arts.
Yeah.
So vendor selling visual arts, non-functional arts.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah,
still
that's kind of
required?
the designation, how it's written in code, and I think that this goes up to, First Amendment stuff is like, is it a usable piece of art? Is it like, okay, is it a vase? Are you selling plates? Or is it something like, no, this is a decorative thing that you hang on the wall?
Yeah.
Or a vase that doesn't hold liquid, it's just for art purposes. Those would qualify the way the laws are as First Amendment products. That's how it's written.
Correct.
Yeah.
They sit at the perimeter of the main entrance.
Right,
of the
no,
event.
yeah.
They can sell things, they're making money unlicensed, they're not paying permits, yet I'm charging people to be inside my event for the visibility, put it on a 10x10 space, pay us money, and then pay the city to go through the process of all these things. They don't have to, right? And then I get the vendors saying, well, why don't, they don't have to, why do I have to, right? It's an inconsistency in all of those permitting and fees for the sake of the fear of a lawsuit for the streets.
Well, you just covered it. I mainly run art shows. So we deal with a lot of people coming and they're gonna sell their art for free. They're not paying that business license, they're not paying taxes. Then they walk around the whole art show and say, oh, why'd you guys pay a booth fee? Your art qualifies under free speech, you don't have to pay tax. We've lost a handful of vendors off of that now aren't paying taxes anymore. They're not gonna pay a business license fee that they were before, so it is a big issue.
Okay. I
don't get a ton of them, but.
Yeah, but when you do, it's an issue, yeah.
Well, it's an issue when they're going around telling all the pay vendors you didn't need to pay it.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I was gonna remain inconspicuous, but I'm Joelle Gutman-Bussing from Northern Rhode Island.
Yeah, also.
From the health department. I do government affairs, so I'm not in inspections, but I am hearing the feedback. There was a law passed this past session
has to do with street food vendors. That's more or less what I thought more this meeting would have to do, but I'm hearing all of your concerns. We are in communication and we are talking about trying to lower some barriers, some complaints the health department is never like left or, but, so anyways, I'm hearing your feedback and we are trying to improve some things. We're listening to what the city of Reno is doing with food cart vendors and peddlers and things like that. Then we'll change some of our regs. It's gonna be a long process. There's gonna be state laws changed as well. So we're all kind of working together, just so you know. And I did bring cards, but if you need me, I can make myself available with phone numbers and things like that.
Anybody else on this? Does anybody online have anything? No? Okay, yes, sir.
Being the oldest special event in Reno Rodeo. The combining the process would be a huge help.
Okay.
You know, if I pull 2 special event license, I get charged for fire inspections on both of them. One's a parade down Sutro. The other one's for parking, blocking Wells Avenue. I don't know why I have to pay fire inspections, and 2 years ago now they quit charging us for that.
Okay.
Because there's no fire inspection involved. But then with the permits, with the vendors and the state tax commission, like she said, is exactly right. The ones that are licensed are fine. The ones that aren't, they pull the date, you know, the event permit, and we collect their sales tax and all that. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but then all the business licenses for that and for the vendors, for the food, the health department. And if you got problems with the health department, it should be in the same parking lot. We share a parking lot. Yeah. But it's been good. I mean, we worked well together the last couple of years. COVID, not so long, but but if you could streamline the process, and probably one of the biggest things is I spend $3,000 to $5,000 a year renewing our site map. And nothing changes, but I have to pay to have them redone every year for the fire department, for the health department, of where everything's set up, and nothing moves a year. To streamline that to where it didn't cost us that extra money to have to just redo the same maps. And the fire department just says, well, we just throw everything away at the end.
Interesting.
Why don't they keep it?
Right.
I mean, it'd be really simple to just say, yep, here's the dates, here's what we're doing. It's the same thing as we did last year.
Wouldn't that be public records? Turn that in?
Yeah, they don't, fire department's not required to keep it.
They're not required to keep.
Well, that's interesting, because we just, we're going through a fire inspection, and it's a new chief and a new whatnot. And there was an event prior to COVID where it was like an indoor flea market, and did all sorts of paperwork and all sorts of hoops for that, and you know, then they're like, oh, well, do you have what you submitted? And it's like, no, so-and-so should have it, and like, oh no, he gets rid of it. We're all supposed to hold on to all of our stuff, why aren't they holding on to their stuff? And again, if it's in the same flex space and like all of this other stuff was previously permitted, there shouldn't be as much question on this next event that I'm doing. Because it's practically parallels and to this other one, and it's like.
They let it go though, it doesn't generate revenue. That's what most of the stuff is revenue generated.
I just wanted to say, I know we're all kind of putting out our gripes and everything.
No,
but for the most part, everyone at the city is very nice, kind of help us. Casey and events have been great. Everyone at code enforcement is always very helpful, and they really do want to help us most of the time. You know, their hands are tied because of these laws or how those written. So we could help us doing the streamline. It's really help their job.
Absolutely.
Because they are getting the brunt of us to be frustrated.
Yep.
Yeah. But there's so much.
Anything else on this topic? No? Okay, next one. We just talked about this. Yeah.
I just want to say thanks again for multiple departments that have come together to put on these events. It's not just, you know, we sit in our office and the amount of paperwork interface with all departments in the city, you know, having Rachel American here. Was phenomenal. Anything's done, answered questions, business licensing, and committee. Where we've come in the 15 years that I've been, 30 years that I've been doing events here in this town.
Yeah.
Where we are now, phenomenal. I mean, I gotta give a lot of praise. Yeah, we've been complaining at the little things, and we've really been when something comes down on us that we've got to solve. Like the last 2 years with Jarvis. But, you know, we've worked through it all, and in spite of any comments or concerns, I just thank you for the work that you guys are doing. It's a pleasure, and at the end of the day, it's a high five moment. It's a huge team that puts these events on for our little town.
Sure. So thanks for that.
And just as a quick note too, I'm Rachel McIntyre. I'm the activation coordinator for the city of Reno. So I'll be working with event promoters directly for sponsorship opportunities, questions, ideas. If you're looking to create new events, anything like that. If you have questions, we'll be holding more meetings specifically for special events in the future as well. So stay tuned. I'll be sending out one for next month to get more promoter feedback and input.
Yeah.
Well, kind of going back, we have a food truck and I just thought about it. Sometimes we get asked, can you guys go to a birthday party or something?
Sure.
Are we allowed to do that or do we need some kind of permit?
If you're a licensed food truck in the area, we can do that. You just can't you can't break any of the rules that were listed. And this is as of right now, as of today, the way the laws that you shouldn't be parking on the street in front of the house. It can't be on public right of way, is basically. So if, you were gonna go to a party and you were in a driveway or something like that, that's allowed.
No, as long as it's within their own property, I don't need to.
Or like a private property of parking lot where, the owner has said, yeah, you can be here.
Which is not like the sidewalk.
Exactly.
Like.
Okay, again, we pretty much already talked about this, so if anybody else wants to weigh in more on First Amendment, it hits events more than anything. Again, I've heard the concerns. If you guys have more, happy to hear them out. Happy to collect any more information on that.
I don't have a comment on that, but on the last one.
Yeah.
I did raise my hand kind of. I'm
Oh, all right,
sorry.
yeah.
No, that's okay. Neighborhood notification.
Yeah.
Is it possible to start doing mailings instead of physically visiting every business now?
I mean, I don't see why not. I'm trying to think of if the code actually says you have to make a physical appearance.
It does.
Okay, and I think then if that's exactly what it says,
Sign off on each business.
then we can talk about, I think that's good feedback too, because, if you can prove that you mail a mailing list,
City of Sparks changed it a couple of years ago, so now all we have to do is do a mailing, which is awesome.
Sure.
So.
Okay, no, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, can we keep it down? Can't hear. Appreciate it, yeah, we thought it'd be.
So if nothing more on First Amendment, your feedback was noted, so, sidewalk vendors. This is currently being redrafted. As Joel mentioned, the legislature passed a law just this last year that basically said what you can and can't do, where you can and can't do it, and what the licensing requirements should be, that they created a task force to look into this, see how it can be better regulated. It's a process that's evolving. We have already taken this chapter to council and received direction to amend it. Basically, the direction that we received was to coincide with the state law, enforce the standard distancing requirements that the state law has given us, which is basically 1,500 feet from any resort hotel or convention space. And that the general sense of the bill was to make this easier for people that want to do it. Reduce barriers to entry. Right now in this chapter, it's chapter 5, it's a privileged license in Reno right now. So you have to get a background check. There are a lot of fees involved with that. Obviously, you still have to go to the health department, get their stuff figured out, pay the inspection fees. So this is, like I said, being currently drafted. It should be back in front of council by next month. And
You mentioned, I haven't heard this before, so they do some sort of permitting, their merchandise, protected, expressive, whatever. Is there a way, because if they get in our face and really become a problem, we can say, look, I need to report.
you're talking
There's nothing I
specifically
can
with the
do.
First Amendment stuff?
Yeah, there's nothing I can do at my event, you're
Yeah.
gonna keep doing it, but there's gonna be a conversation on Monday, my weekend, that your name's gonna come up and be represented. And no one shows up with ID, no one shows up with any documentation, they're not registered for anything, obviously, but is there a process that maybe the city could look at for some sort of a licensing or regulation, not, you know, we're not changing their ability for freedom of speech, not impinging on it, but some sort of a process.
Registration or something.
You know, we at our level that encounters some terrible people. Have some mechanism of, I don't know, maybe just feeling like we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but there's nothing. I mean, petitioners are gonna show up. Who's your director? Who are you with? Doesn't matter. Right. You know, with this merchandise, what are you doing in my front? Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. Is there a way to look into some sort of a process where we can get a name or a number or say this particular vendor, you know, watch out.
Yeah.
You know, we can't do anything about it, but there's a problem.
That's a good thought. We'll definitely keep it at the top of the list for this stuff, because I know it's, we'll have questions. What is it? How do you regulate it? So no, I appreciate that. Yeah.
It seems freedom of speech is, should be protected, but sales have nothing to do with freedom of speech.
Sure.
Sales are sales, okay, whether it's freedom of speech or not. And that should be permitted, regulated, taxed, whatever the case may be. You can say anything you want, but once you start selling stuff, that's just.
Commerce.
Right, that's commerce.
I had a question on the sidewalk vendors. There is in a neighborhood, they have like live music happening at like different, inside of different establishments. They want to activate, they don't want to do a street closure, they want to activate the sidewalks outside of those businesses with like live art, buskers, kind of like dancing in the streets, like, or when it was like Midtown Art Walk used to be, where it was like the center of all of the sidewalks doing stuff. Is that a sidewalk permit or a special event permit?
Well, if you're closing the street off, it's gonna be special event.
They're not closing the street, they
So
literally
just
just want to
be
put
sidewalk?
people
Yeah,
on
so
the
you'd be
sidewalks.
a sidewalk vendor under the current code.
Okay.
And like I said, that's gonna change. The current code says you have to be in one specific spot. Like I'm on the corner of First and Virginia, that's my spot. I'm supposed to be there. You can't just walk around.
What if this is like, so it's not that, it's like on Monday, Saturday, March 15th, we're doing this thing in our neighborhood. It doesn't require a special event permit because we're not using any public spaces or closing any streets.
Okay.
But we want to use the sidewalks to put artists, vendors, street buskers, musicians on the sidewalks.
Yeah, if it was public right away, I would say, aside from us having any jurisdiction on like a special event permit, which is, I think would be like an occupancy permit or something that would, basically go through the.
Or would it maybe be a special event permit since it's a sidewalk?
It's
Like,
public right of way.
Exactly.
That's the differentiation.
If you're
So
on the
have them pull
sidewalk,
a permit, a
it's
special
still
event
different.
permit for sidewalk.
the way it stands right now. So,
That way they're protected,
yeah, exactly.
you.
There's the liability. of everything.
because the right of way includes the sidewalk in most cases.
So again, with sidewalk vendors, that's something that we're working on right now. The draft introductory language will be in front of council in November. And then obviously as that process evolves, it's like I said, it's baseline with the state requirements at this point. And if we get people that are coming in saying, it needs to be changed, it needs to be, we can't loosen it so much as what beyond what the requires. But we could enforce, more if the community and the council said like, we want to see a little bit more regulation. But at this point, we're going straight along the lines of what the state's requiring. We're gonna see how that unfolds. So it's kind of a separate from all this process, it's already underway. But we're happy to take feedback on that too, if you have any. Next slide. Towing and booting. I don't know if anybody has any interest in this. I rarely ever get any questions or concerns with how towing and booting licenses are regulated, enforced, administered. I don't know that I've ever maybe had one since I've been in the city, but I'm happy to take any comments. Most of the overlooking this stuff would be updating language and making sure that it's consistent with state law. If anybody has any comments on that, I'm happy to hear you out. No? All right, next one. Vehicles for hire. This would essentially be like taxi cab businesses, limousine drivers. We even have horse-drawn vehicles pulled out here. We don't have any of those handsome cab type things here, but you're available to do it. Petty cabs, same thing. Again, not a lot of issues with this type of licensing. We have a few, and we don't get a lot of complaints. But if there are complaints or things that can be more efficient, now's the time to kind of share that information.
Do the rideshare companies fall under this?
Rideshare companies are a separate animal altogether, and I think that, we've talked about that a little bit, how they need to be looked at. We will license the actual rideshare company, but the individual drivers are not subject to licensure at this time.
Transportation Authority licenses those individually.
Exactly, so at the city level, we don't touch them. So yeah, that's where we're at on those right now. Next slide. This kind of falls along with special events. I don't know if any of you ever had to pull a film permit, but again, we don't have a lot of issues with this, but it is something that's a privileged license that you have to come in and basically apply for a special, similar to a special event. If motion picture companies here making a movie or commercial, you know, they have to make sure they're insured to be able to do it, and safety requirements, conditions, how they can display the city. It's pretty standard language for most municipalities, I'd say.
Is this for the use of, city streets? Or-
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you'll see it in the movie scene or something like that, you want to close it off.
Well, no, I do TV parts myself,
Oh, okay, yeah.
but it's usually inside my.
Yeah, so you'd be fine. Yeah, this would be if you're on the city park or Virginia Street, or something. Any more questions on that? No, nobody online? Okay. That's it for today. This will be the next set of chapters we look at tomorrow, and that'll wrap it up. I'm gonna do this same presentation tonight, and then tomorrow we'll do this one twice. So if you have any questions about this, if you just have a question, you're welcome to just stay after and ask me. But if you'd like to participate and you have some general feedback on any of these chapters, we're glad to have you here. It's good to have conversation with more people, the better. So yeah, if you have questions, then you can send an email, blcode@reno.gov. That comes to our office. We want to keep all that to know what we want to see this stuff in writing. We have this all recorded so we can, file it up and break down the data. But it's great to have comments in writing too. So even if you don't want one and you talk to a friend that has a business they want to share, please direct them there. And everything's on that website, reno.gov/business license. You can get into the whole schedule of events, meetings that are recorded, draft documents that go up, everything should be there. So with that, if nobody has any questions, then that's that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.